Good afternoon. This is a theme that needs to be talked about. We need to actually spend more time than we have been spending on this. So I asked what they'd like to hear from me, and I was told one of the things which would be useful is your own journey. So ours is a business which was set up by my dad and his brothers when they came in as refugees to what became a foreign country overnight. They used to live in the part of India which became Pakistan. Like millions of others, they left everything behind, their homes, business, property, assets, and came back with the shirts on their back, literally, and moved around to a few parts of India before they settled down in a town about 200 miles due northwest of Delhi called Ludhiana. They started to trade in bicycle parts. And I think they were doing something which was unusual in India at that time, which was providing customer service. That was a time when everything was in short supply. No matter what you made, what you produced, it would always sell. So they had a value system, and because the business was just them, it was the four brothers and a couple of other people working with them, their value system became the business's value system. And that was quite interesting. Of course, now we document all of this. All new employees in the company are put through an induction program where they're taught when some of these value systems are espoused and detailed as something that we stand by as an organization. I'm not sure this was any deliberate attempt to build a global enterprise at that point in time. This was a business to survive, to provide for the families and for those around them. Starting from trading in bicycle parts to making bicycle parts and starting up manufacture of bicycles in 1956, this became the world's largest bicycle company in 1986. What they did in the interim was quite interesting. They set in practice a working ethos, which today is called modern governance and management practices. Almost all of them. We're amongst the few companies in India which had to make almost no change as governance started to get rated, started to get talked about, and now we have a whole host of regulations on governance in companies, both listed and unlisted. We've always had outside board members sitting on our private companies. Our private companies have always actually had board meetings. Arm's length transactions, related party transactions was something that were practiced always in these companies. And we did a lot of business with family and friends. Because in the early days itself, they found you couldn't make as many bicycles as you wanted or even as many as you could sell, because critical component, even for bicycles, came from the UK, which is what had happened when in the 250 years the British were here. They took all value addition out of India into the UK. So you had to import things like chains, hubs, freewheels, tires, rims, all kinds of components. So they said, this will not do. So they went around to family and friends, said, if you would like to start a business, we will help you select the component, equipment, design, etc. But there are two things we will not do for you. We will not fund the business for you, and we will not run the business for you. And also remember, inside this room, we are cousins or nephews or friends, but outside we are what we are, but inside, we are only business associates. So things like arm's length transaction was established in the mid-50s itself, 1950s. And that started also a system of supply chain, which later on, when we spoke with Honda for a partnership to make motorcycles and scooters in India, was appreciated as a system they had not seen in any other Indian company. So they appreciated things like relationship with suppliers, which were only, in those days, only running in Japan, lifetime engagement with employees, which was very unusual in India, and a whole host of other initiatives. What this did do for our companies and for us is it created a network for the companies, both of suppliers, dealers, distributors, which became part of one large family. It created millions of economic opportunities, literally millions actually. Many people who work within our companies, those who work in our supply chain partners, and many more who work in the dealers and distributors. And early on, these businesses started doing business in the rural parts of India, which were highly, highly underserved. which still are. But in many ways, in those days, there was literally no access to many of these places. So without quite realizing what was going on, this was a business which had a social impact on day one. The way it operated and the kind of reach it built. From making bicycles, we went on to make mopeds and motorcycle and a whole host of other businesses in the interim got established. About 10 years ago, we restructured the business. At that point in time, we had 32 companies in all kinds of areas. We had services, we had manufacturing, we had distribution, and many, many of them were working with partners. Because that's the other thing we learned quite quickly, that people are our biggest asset. It's actually the only asset which is appreciating with time. Every other asset that we have, buildings, equipment, technology, machines, and by the way, we built some of the best buildings. We have the world's largest green roof in one of our companies, and another company that we built is considered the greenest and the environmental friendliest building in the world in the automotive business. And there are a whole host of such initiatives that go on. There are two things we did early on with the environment. One was looking at things like air pollution and water pollution inside the plants. Second was working with the environment, which is the physical people environment, communities around us. So very early on, we started setting up schools, colleges, hospitals, clean drinking water programs. Wherever we would set up an operation, this is something that got established automatically. But these were all not-for-profit initiatives. But the impact and the goodwill that it generated for us was immense. And I think in many ways, this is what has allowed these companies to grow at a pace that they have. When we restructured the group, we had 7 businesses which were global leaders, which is, as you know, is quite unusual. Only 2 or 3 of them, of course, were publicly known, because another part of their philosophy is we do not like to talk about what we do, which is why I had to have my arm twisted, actually, to come here today and talk about some of the initiatives. Some of the initiatives that we have launched in the interim, because a lot of the systems in India actually were broken for a long time. Access to education, quality of education, looking at women as an equal are actually a better resource, because I do believe that's the smarter half of our population, is a big challenge in India. We have built many biases into our system. We have a regional bias, a language bias, a color bias. So we kind of seem to think those who speak English are actually smarter. And frankly, there is no evidence to show that whatsoever, anywhere in this country. So we started recently an initiative called the Serendipity Arts Foundation. And this foundation is working on improving reach of the arts and artisanal skills of India. We have the world's richest cultural heritage, and that's being allowed to decline over the last 50-odd years, actually 250-odd years. So we thought it's about time that some of us get together. So we built it as a neutral platform. We don't call it Hero, which is the company's brand. We don't call it by the family name. We call it Serendipity, and we welcome anybody and everybody to get engaged. Last year was the second year of organizing a large multidisciplinary festival in Goa, and we had a footfall of 400,000. Each year, we've doubled the scale. When I'm saying each year, this is only year 3. This year is going to be double the size that we had last year. We're trying to reach out to artists, to craftsmen and women, because a lot of them come from the rural areas, and they're just letting this go and migrating to the towns and cities to take jobs in call centers and bank tellers, and frankly, they don't get all these jobs. It's a big, big challenge for them and for their families. So you have families broken up, living in multiple geographies, trying to make do with what they can. So we believe there is a possibility to touch 100 million people through an initiative which will allow the artisanal skills to work with more contemporary design and to be able to teach and reach out and touch the markets across the globe. We've also invested in initiatives, impact initiatives like Avishkar. I think Vineet is here somewhere. He runs an outstanding initiative which goes out and actually sets up businesses where it matters, exactly to the point that you were just making. These are businesses where people have put their lives on the line to help people in garbage management, in clean drinking water, in education, in adult literacy, in health care, reaching healthcare. Because India has 2 big challenges, the quality of both education and healthcare and the reach of these. So both of them require attention. We did launch another initiative. I was involved, I'm quite deeply involved with the Confederation of Indian Industry. That's India's largest industry association. in something called the rural business hubs. We brought large companies into the rural areas, and you said you work with the local people and the local skills, help them become either suppliers with you, help them make their products or services as good as the ones you use for yourselves, allow yourselves a little bit longer time to break even. Look at these as business, by the way, but allow the impact to remain where it counts, where it matters, and you become like a supporter, sponsor, and mentor to the organization. I think in a country like ours, there are many challenges that we face. There are tremendous and fantastic initiatives going on. We do need to find a way to connect many of them, to learn from each other, and to have real scale for big impact. Thank you very much, and all the best. Thank you.